Yo, what is up guys? It's your boy Sami here. Today we are gonna see what if Naruto becomes the mythical knight part 1. Hope you will enjoy the video. So before we start, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. So let's begin the video.
There was a city hidden from the world in the continent of elements. Hidden badly considering it was such an economical power to the world and an epicenter for Fire Country's military might. It wasn't the capital, but it might as well have been. It was the staging and primary setting for the country's military. The ninja. The superpowered, almost magic-like beings. They were people who trained and worked to control their use of internal spiritual and mental abilities. It was their kai, or what they mainly referred to as their chakra. Though, in truth, using the words military and ninja was being kind. They were more like mercenaries than anything else most of the time. It earned them and their home city money since they weren't at war. They had to be useful, or they would only be a drain on resources. It also helped to increase their home power and influence through allying themselves with smaller countries and influences that did not have ninja or only had them in small supply. However, an event was soon to rise where the world would have to change. It was time a new type of ninja would come to bear. Throughout history, great civilizations and cultures have fallen to give way for something new, and some would say better, while others would miss the past or even envy it. However, nothing was set forever. The last 600 years or so had been a nightmare for the world disguised as a blessing, as people with power ruled over the world. They grew corruption throughout, but no matter who stood up to fight oppression, laws grew around it, protecting the corrupt, and the world grew stale, and with no laws to protect the people, but rather guidelines that the unjust could ignore when it suited them. Hope seemed to dwindle in the hopelessness of the growth into the era of ninja, a change people had hoped would bring law to the world, but instead more war and corruption. The law enforcement was entrusted to the ninja, many of whom were good men and women, but they were stopped by laws protecting the rich and powerful, laws some ninja would try to change, but they were smugly blocked by the greed and ignorance of men, and that led to more war and death. The ninja would soon choose to follow their orders to the letter, learning to believe that was what was the right thing to do, and ignoring orders was treason, and being labeled a traitor was the worst thing that could happen. Some would not stomach the title traitor, even though they betrayed their hearts and morals and people for the greed and power of the worst kind of scum. The world would soon change because of the pariah of all of the city of Konoha. It was ironic that the most hated child in the city would be such a person to protect the innocent and defenseless, but maybe not, as he had been the victim on too many occasions to count because of what he was. Jinchuriki no Kyuubi no Kitsune. Naruto Uzumaki was a 14-year-old boy when his legend in shadows got into high gear. He was a blonde. His hair contained a bright sunny yellow shade to the color. He was sulking and bored, and quite honestly at that time he felt like punching someone, but still he refused to fall into the darkness. He refused to give his haters any validity to their claims that he was the fox demon he held prisoner, and most of all, he would not be a moody arsehole like Sasuke Uchiha. The village blamed Naruto for the demon fox's rampage near the city. Thing didn't even do much property damage, and hurt him because they wanted to believe that he was the demon that was sealed deep within his very being. But Naruto was no demon. He was just a child who suffered for what it had done. The people didn't care to see the reason. They wanted to see him as the demon because they were small and petty, but he knew inside his heart and soul that he was far above anything like that. He would be a great ninja, and he would be that great ninja on his terms, no one else's. He wouldn't be an obedient fool like them. But then, they were only obedient when it suited them. It was selfish. It was bitter and greedy. They didn't just fail the city of Konoha, but they failed the world. They had meaningless lives, and their dreams and hopes were all centered on what they could get, what they could take. Naruto could only feel that they deserved to be punished, but no one would. No one could without disobeying the village, and no one, not even the people who were supposed to, would help him, not even with the training in combat he needed. Everything he was or had he worked for alone because nobody cared about his training. They cared more for the training of the genius bloodline students who didn't even want to appreciate their help. It sometimes made Naruto wonder who decided they were genius. They didn't train nearly as much as he did. If that was the case, then maybe with some training, Naruto could have been classed by fools as a genius. But they would hate a genius demon, but then only the rich and middle class ever showed their hate for him. Genius was so subjective. He had met these geniuses, and with the exception of a couple they weren't that clever, so maybe they should just call these people somewhat gifted in ninja stuff. Anyway, back on track, when it came to the poor, downtrodden, and all around normal people, they were perfectly fine with Naruto, and never looked down on him for his burden. They knew how it was to be treated like crap, so they understood the young blonde, and without people like them to show him that the world wasn't only completely full of greed, spite, and needless pitiless hate, he might have ended up turning on them. He didn't know what to do half of the time, but he tried his best to be better. Naruto and his ninja team had gotten back from a tiring but exciting mission protecting a small fishing town in Wave Country, and making sure their bridge to the mainland of the Land of Fire was built, so that the monopolizing bastard business tycoon could be stopped squeezing the life out of the Land of Waves. Though, Naruto still believed that an assassination would have been quicker and more cost-effective for both Konoha and the village in Wave. However, fortunately, the people of Wave could finally start dealing with Fire Country via land and not the waters. Though, it was ironic that the bastard tycoon was killed anyway, falling foul to his own evil self-serving greed. In other words, he pissed off his own hired thug, an A-class missing ninja who wasn't known as the demon in the mist for irony's sake. Naruto sighed as he wandered through the forest surrounding the city's training grounds, thinking hard about his pitiful life, wondering what he could ever do to get any respect from the village's ninja. His cerulean blue eyes were unusually dull, and he was subdued. He never let people see him when he was feeling like crap. He didn't want any of his haters to get any satisfaction out of it. He was feeling terrible because the world always seemed out to get him and take what was his to claim, or that was how it felt when his team was like that. They had to grow up. He tried, but it wasn't easy when his teacher was also against him. Like most too busy fawning over Sasuke Uchiha, he didn't want all of that attention himself anyway, which was several different shades of messed up. Naruto wasn't sure whether he should feel jealous of Sasuke for getting all the attention and respect or pity him. Sometimes he would secretly feel bad for Sasuke. They had some things in common. They were both orphaned at least. Sasuke also didn't get people, or chose not to. But Sasuke got everything while Naruto got grief. Their sensei only had eyes for the last wielder, loyal of the. It was weird with how much attention Kakashi gave Sasuke. Naruto had been looking forward to his first ever mission and trip outside of Konoha. However, their sensei only had plans on the Uchiha. Kakashi Haddock, their sensei, only taught Naruto and Sakura Haruno, his third and final teammate, one thing, and that seemed like it was only to motivate Sasuke. He taught them how to use chakra to walk up vertical surfaces, which was useful, but that was all, and he had been their sensei for 6 months. Naruto actually saw that the tree walking exercise, as they called it, as little more than a technique that should have been taught in the academy, along with that water walking one Naruto would likely have to figure out for himself. He mentioned that, but just got a blank look from Kakashi, and it looked as if Sasuke might have agreed with him if Kakashi. A Jounin sensei hadn't just brushed it off, dismissing his observation. He got dismissed a lot, especially when he made sense. Then Naruto had to put up with more Sakura. She was Sasuke's fangirl, and Naruto was growing tired of bothering her. He thought it was funny. Pick the loudest, most annoying girl in class, and crush on her. He had actually started finding it fun, but then she started getting violent, so he got in her way just to get back at her. Sakura wasn't a bad person deep down, but Naruto had met her mother once. The woman wasn't right in the head or something, and encouraged Sakura's fangilism rather than her training, which could get the pink-haired girl killed if it continued. Naruto wondered whether he could manipulate her into training, or trick someone into getting her extra lessons from a woman who didn't fawn over men boys instead of training. Naruto wished he had picked to bother Ino instead. He was sure she would have enjoyed his attention. He knew he was fairly good looking from what he knew of that. Ino was much more together mentally that if she had someone else, she would have given up on Sasuke and fangilism. In truth, he got the impression that the cute blonde only bugged Sasuke to spend time with Sakura, as they had split up their friendship to be rivals in love, and she might have regretted that, as she had grown up some since they started the academy. Though, when all the other girls went chasing, Ino wasn't the type that wanted to lose, so maybe there was more to that too, and she had no other options open, so didn't care, or Naruto was thinking about it too much. At least there was the magnificently adorable Hinata Hyuga. Naruto liked her. She was his most favorite girl in all of Konoha. She wasn't an Uchiha fangirl. In fact, she was Naruto's fangirl. He had caught her staring dreamily, and following him around sometimes when he let her, sometimes changing it, and hiding from her so he could watch her instead. If she was allowed to stalk him, then the turnaround was fair play. However, she was the princess of the Hyuga clan, so he couldn't even try to be friends with her, at least outside of missions. They would have to get stronger, and her sneakier. He had heard about her father. He was a Babana. Naruto wouldn't do anything to make her life harder just because he was lonely. Not yet anyway. Maybe when he was strong enough to kick her father's teeth down his throat. That sounded fun. Naruto would love to have Hinata snuggled in his arms, curled up on his lap. He felt a pleasant chill run down his spine thinking about her. Naruto and the team had arrived back home, and Kakashi gave Naruto and Sakura the week off, and took Sasuke for some extra training, as per the norm. He wasn't even trying to be subtle about anything. The worst thing was that Sakura didn't even care. She honestly believed that Sasuke deserved better treatment than either of them. Even Sasuke wasn't that big-headed, and surprisingly refused, glaring at the man, but Kakashi had just told him that he wouldn't take no for an answer the next morning, and Sasuke gave in to shut him up. Naruto had followed them that morning. Even Kakashi hadn't sensed him. All the teacher, and he couldn't use the word teacher more loosely, wanted Sasuke to use his copycat eyes, while Kakashi showed him several ninjutsu techniques, and then told him to learn them within the week. As if that was teaching him anything. But then maybe that was how Kakashi got the techniques himself, so didn't know how to teach them, or anything about them. Then thinking back on the tree walking, Naruto was certain that wasn't teaching either. Kakashi explained it with minimal information and then demonstrated. After that Kakashi walked off reading porn. Naruto was no expert, but he was certain that no teacher should be reading porn instead of teaching their students. It should have been more along the lines of teach, 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 and then when the job was well done and you got home, reward porn. And yes, that should be capitalized. Naruto had figured that, since he was back in the city, that he would ask his long-term sensei from the academy whether he could give him some lessons, maybe some help with his much-needed chakra control, or some taijutsu since school was still out. He was hopeful, even though he was just as doubtful. If the man couldn't leave the pages of the big book of stupid rules for kids who were going to graduate and potentially get themselves killed fighting ninja, why would he for someone who had fluked themselves through an A-rank mission? Naruto Yamino was a man who followed a code that preached fairness. However, it wasn't fair, as Naruto knew all too well. Naruto had asked for extra help many times before, but he was told the same thing. It wouldn't be fair to the rest of the class to give him extra help. Naruto didn't get how it would be extra help to assist someone who was struggling, especially in a field so full of potential and probable early death. Naruto even pointed out that half of the class lived with ninja, or even had large ninja families to get help from, and asked how that could be fair. Iruka had changed the subject. Naruto never bothered asking again after that, but he also realized over time that some kids learn differently, or at different rates. However, it was only the fast learners that got any extra help, and all of the praise. They could have been different, so much potential lost to inflate the gifted ninjas' egos. They call fast learners genius, but Naruto wasn't sure he would. Naruto was better than Sasuke at maths. Heck, he was better than Shikamaru Nara at maths. Though he knew the lazy bum would get there, his mind wasn't very fast. Naruto knew he thought on the sly. He could make things up, as he went while Shikamaru would fall under the pressure. The lazy guy would have to sit and think a problem over, while Naruto could do that fighting. It always was amazing what you could see when you were stuck on the outside. But he would have to have said that Shikamaru had never been bad to him. He, Hinata, Shino Apuram, and Choji Akimichi were likely the only kids in the academy that hadn't picked on him. That was kind of sad that it was only 4 out of 30 kids that hadn't been douches. However, back with asking his academy teacher, Iruka-sensei, whether he could help him train, Iruka gave him some bull crap about needing Kakashi's permission, which was very unlikely that it was needed, possibly courtesy to ask, but not needed, so Naruto didn't bother asking Kakashi. As he knew he would say no, and didn't even acknowledge Iruka when he left. If he had really cared, he would have offered Naruto the training and help without needing to be asked. Naruto swore that someday, whether he was running things or not, that he would reform the academy, all academies, if academics in the arts of chakra use had become so lame that the kids weren't even taught something as basic and essential to ninja as tree walking. He wouldn't care whether he would have to get strong enough to crush a cage. He would do it for the kids and to amuse himself by showing the idiots up, and they didn't care that they were setting children up to die. Naruto had read the statistics, and fresh ninja had a 92% death rate if they left the city within the first 5 years, if they came from a civilian family, which amounted to 90% of all academy students, which was ridiculously high, and an unnecessary loss of life. He thought he should have read those statistics before he was so eager to go out into the field, let alone when his mission became an A-rank mission, jumping 2 ranks in the process, which was crazy irresponsible of him, let alone that idiot Kakashi. Though, Naruto didn't regret what he did to save that small country. Apparently, even a standard C-rank mission was dangerous enough for the likes of him, and especially Sakura. If it weren't for Naruto, he was sure Sakura wouldn't have returned alive. He wondered whether Kakashi was just hoping that he and Sakura would have died, and he could have then taken Sasuke on as his apprentice without Naruto and Sasuke in the way. Naruto even put in a complaint with the Hokage, but the great and mighty leader of Konoha wouldn't believe that one of his most trusted would be a spineless douchebag. He wasn't surprised that his complaint was laughed away. It was the same when he made a complaint that his school grades were being sabotaged, and that the school wasn't teaching them anything worthwhile. The old leader had even shown Naruto some of his work. It wasn't even his handwriting, and lots of the work was scrubbed out, and the old man still wouldn't believe him. Now he knew why a large portion of the village hated him. Naruto wondered whether the Hokage did believe him, but let them get away with it to appease certain fools who had their heads so far up each other's money chutes that they could barely breathe through giddy affixation. Naruto made a silent promise to someday actually shove their heads up their own arses and leave them to die horrible and slow deaths. It was not a true leader that appeased the people like that, because appeasing them time and time again, and you became nothing but a man who would harm children for your people's sick ambition and greed. It may not be a solid law, as the Hokage didn't see fit to make it one, but it was normally by moral rule not right to harm children. Naruto would someday make it law throughout Fire Country and beyond. Naruto had tried to keep up his smokescreen, his lie, his smile. He couldn't hold it together anymore. He had to step into the shadows and let the darkness hide him. He could then throw the knife, swing the sword, or fire the arrow that would end the lives of those who wouldn't only fail his city and its good people, but fail the country and all that the world had to offer. He had only grown, mostly from observation. He wanted to be able to give Hinata a hug and comfort her, help her become the strong girl he knew she was. He only needed more strength, more skill. He needed to be able to strike from the shadows, slip through the light, and never be seen. The only reason they should know he was there was when he wanted them to. He wanted them to fear his justice. That was what he wanted to bring to the world. He wanted to bring justice because he had seen so little of that ideology that it was so sad. He knew there were good people in the world that got screwed over and walked on because they wanted to do what was right, and Naruto knew that it was time someone stood up and said that it was wrong of them. To be able to slide around in the shadows, Naruto knew that he would have to perfect his chakra control and perhaps separate the Kyuubi's chakra from his during battle. It would give him his own strength and a battery to charge up on if needed. Naruto slumped tiredly down into the shade of one of the abnormally large trees that grew around the city. He leaned up against the tree and looked at his horrible orange jumpsuit. He had wanted to buy something new in Wave because the people in Konoha, in ninja stores, either ripped him off or wouldn't serve him, and if he hanged, transformed using a solid illusion, and the shop owner recognized his stuff, he would get accused of stealing. It happened once before, and he had gotten a beating, and his stuff had been stolen. He remembered the fire that store suffered sometime after that. The store owner cried almost as much as Naruto had when he took his beating. Turned out the guy had been using loan sharks and not paying his bill. Naruto didn't have any pity. It was almost like karma really existed. He took a deep breath as he looked around at the forest, the flowers, the deep blue sky, and the soft wisps of clouds. It was relaxing to be out in nature. He could hear the birds singing, the snakes in the grass, and the soft breeze as it drifted across his skin. The sun was out, and the hustle and bustle of the city was far away in the distance, except for a train he could hear not too far away, as he wasn't ridiculously far from the tracks. However, Naruto's eyes got heavy as he just thought of the way the world was, hoping he could do something to change it. He needed to become stronger, and that meant training. He would have to steal from the library to get what he needed, but that was easy, as the guards, all of them in Konoha, were very crap at their jobs. Naruto startled himself as he slipped back and seemed to fall through the tree with a splash, but found he was alone in a dark dungeon tunnel with burning lit torches sparse on the dirty brick walls. It had a couple of inches of water on the grimy floor. The hall had a chill blowing through it, causing him to shiver, but with a few deep breaths he pulled himself together. He could see down one way, which led to a dead end, but the other went straight on into the darkness. It wouldn't have taken a genius to work out what was happening, or where he was, because he just knew. He was going to meet his prisoner. The Kyuubi was calling for its warden, and like a fool, Naruto was going to meet with it, if for nothing more than curiosity, because it had so many answers, and he had quite a few questions. Naruto felt that chill continuing, and worsening. The closer he got, the worse it got. But he ventured forward. It was nice that his mind at least gave him torches. He wondered whether he was a bit masochistic walking towards the greatest creature on the planet, when he remembered it was his mind, and the monster was his prisoner. His fists clenched and unclenched as he took a few deep breaths. He could almost smell it, but slowly walked towards whatever fate lay out for him. It took him longer than he thought it would, before he walked out into a vast chamber with a rusty cube cage at its very center, with an eerie red glow coming from the thick shadows within. Naruto moved slowly closer. He was surprised the cage was so small. It was surely the size for several humans, not a 200-foot-tall monster fox. He wouldn't believe the fourth Hokage would be that cruel, even to an enemy. The cage was deep and dark, and around the edges glowed with a crimson light that he knew was it. Somehow that glow made him believe that the cage was endless on the inside with infinite darkness. "Hello, jailer." Naruto was startled as he heard the whimsical, soft, and certainly female voice purring out a sultry greeting. He stopped. His heartbeat picked up pace as two small hands slid out of the darkness, and red glowed, her fingers sliding around the bars. Her nails were sharp and pointed, and her arms soft and slender. It took a moment before she stepped out with 9 huge red and black fox tails swishing around behind her with a mind of their own. She was the most stunning creature he had ever seen. Well, maybe not. He was a little flustered, he couldn't be sure, but she was stunning. He could feel his body reacting as his heart pumped blood down his body. It was understandable, as she was naked and he was a teenage boy. And well, she was a naked teenage fox girl with a beautiful body. She was lightly toned and slender. She was a head shorter than him, even if she was the same age. Her upai weren't very large, but rather nice and perky, and some pencil eraser pink nipples on her milky white skin that were rock hard. She had a small stomach and frame with long smooth legs, down to small feet, and up round a firm butt. Between her legs was hairless, and looked so soft that he would have loved to touch her. He would love to stroke his fingers over her, and had to take several steadying breaths to calm his thoughts and nerves steady. Her face was round and cute with a small nose. Her skin was totally flawless. She would be remarkably cute if her face didn't have an evil scowl. Her eyes were glowing crimson with slanted pupils. Her hair was blood red, but surprisingly short. It was messy over her head in all directions, but looked like that was on purpose, with long trails over her adorable fox ears. They were crimson with black tips. The trails of hair ended down over her shoulders, but not quite covering her small upai, framing her evil little face perfectly. Like what you see? You filthy little human. She might have been looking at him like a piece of meat, but her voice stayed calm and soft. Naruto actually found her voice to be quite pleasant. It was soft and sweet. He would admit to himself at least that he could cuddle with her day and night and not get bored. He could see beyond the hostility to the sweet creature before him that longed for comfort and a loving partner. He couldn't help but stutter. He was quick to hide the huge bulge in his trousers with his hands, as her eyes had casually looked down there. His face went bright red, but she didn't even show any sign of embarrassment or that she might move back into the shadows to hide her nakedness. However, the left side of her blood-colored plump lips corked up into some semblance of a smirk. He could just tell that she enjoyed his attention, and he felt better about the situation because she was okay with it. "Oh, I'm flattered. My pathetically weak jailer gets such a hard babana so quickly by just looking at a little old me," she said, singing the song, and this time she wasn't being as rude as before. "I'm not weak." His defiance overcame his nerves. "Someday I'm going to become Hokage or something like that, and everyone will have to respect me. I'll change the world, and the greedy pricks will get what's coming to them. No matter how strong you get, those people will always treat you like shit." She hissed out, startling him, as she pushed her delicious body up against the bars, her face pushed up to them to look into his eyes better. "There will always be greed, and there will always be men like Gato who will take advantage of the good." Naruto didn't reply, as he looked down at his feet. He knew she was right, but didn't want to admit that to himself. He had dreamt of becoming Hokage. At first, he wanted to force the city to respect him, but now he wanted to stop the corruption, even if it meant killing them all. That would then protect the weak and innocent from the danger they possessed, and if he had to commit crimes and betray the city, then so be it. "You think much too small, jailer," she added to the silence, abruptly pushing back from the bars and slinking into the shadows before exiting at another corner, her fingernail tapping the bars with a thoughtful smile, looking at him, amused. Naruto's head snapped towards her, as the clinking of her nails caught his attention. What do you mean the Hokage is the most powerful and respected ninja in the city?" He wondered whether she thought he would actually kill off the emperor and his family to take their place, and people would obey him. "Why should you trust that their respect wouldn't really be feared?" she asked, and for once in a very long time, Naruto truly doubted his dream, as he knew that the only way at the present that he would get that seat was through fear. He didn't want to be the top boss if everyone really feared him, or even if it was just the civilians that feared him, rich and corrupt ones at least. That wasn't how he would want to be remembered as the most feared cage. He wouldn't even want other cities to remember him like that. He would want to be remembered as a hero. He would want people to know him as a man that fought for justice and what was right. Kyuubi let out a chuckle that brought him from his thoughts as she continued speaking. "Respect is a two-way street, jailer. Let's say you manage to get their respect. What about all of the crimes they have already committed against you? Can you just let that go? Can you forgive their transgressions when you know deep down that they don't think you're me? They just want validation to bully you to satisfy their own petty vendetta against me. Will they have your respect?" she asked, and he almost jumped, as those words sunk in, making him feel like his blood momentarily froze ice cold. They could never have his respect. How could he give them such an important part of who he was? It made him feel ill to think that he would have to respect them in return. It was a two-way street, but they would have a long way to go to get a moment of respect, and he doubted they would care to walk that far. He would only respect those who never hurt him, while the greedy could die for all he cared. One day, Jailer-chan, you would wake up and realize that most of the people praising your name had once hated you, beat you, and some had even tortured you, yet they had gotten away with it. "But that's your fault," he whispered, confused because he didn't actually believe it was her fault, as the people had their own minds. "If you hadn't attacked," he began, but had to trail to a stop. She startled him, as she burst out laughing. It was insane and full of rage, which was odd, as he hadn't heard real evil laughter before, but he was sure she got it down to an art, and secretly it was kind of hot coming from her. She suddenly stopped after a few more moments, and he fell to his knees under her killing intent. He found it hard to breathe, but he had felt so much intent over the years he wouldn't let hers get to him. It took him a moment to stand, and she let up her attack, almost looking pleased by his reaction. He fought off her power. "You're so like your mother, arrogant beyond all belief," she hissed out, shocking him into just staring, his trouser problem completely gone now, but she rolled those ruby red eyes. "Oh, I forget that senile old man won't tell you anything about your mother, not even her name. Or even your father's for that matter," she said with a small smile, this time forlorn. "I have grown to love your mother, and honestly I miss her visits. She was fun, and kind of funny too. But the old man doesn't know who they were," he whispered, now feeling lost and hopeless. He wanted to believe she was just trying to get to him, trying to control him, but something inside him said it was the truth. He knew the Hokage enough to know that he would keep the truth from him, and then give him some lame excuse as to why he was found out. Your father did seal me here, so I think the old man would know the truth, she said, and this time he dropped to his knees looking sick and green in the cheeks. Your mother was in my previous prison. She was nice to me, held me, and well, among other things. Her name was Kushina Uzumaki of the infamous Uzumaki clan of the Land of Whirlpool, but it was her seal was so different to this. I was practically pinned down, but she loved me anyway, and held me when I was in pain, which was a lot of the time. This seal is stronger though, but I get so much more freedom. I like it more, but watching over you sometimes makes me feel sick the way they treat her son. Naruto looked up with angry tears welling up in his eyes. Tell me why, please. I don't understand, why, please. Her angry eyes softened a little more. It's because your mother's seal grew weak during childbirth. You never used your own power to seal me, you were too young, but your father used his, but he's not here to keep me. This seals more automatically. It's so much better for you this way, you can learn, become stronger, and even use my power. You can get vengeance on the city for daring to defile your family's sacrifice. His eyes widened in shock as he stood up shaking his head. If they might deserve it, they do deserve it, well some of them, but that's not me. I'm not like that. I want to be better than them. I'll be Hokage. They can think of me as they want, but I will never be what they think of me. I will be a hero to all, and a demon to corruption, so it all ends. You're thinking bigger, but still too small again, she muttered, as she started pacing the length of her cage. Her every movement, perfect, graceful, flawless, and beautiful, and it was almost hypnotic in a way. What else is there? He asked, as he wiped his eyes clean, as he looked at her. I've never heard of anything. Why would you want to rule a city, when the universe is so huge, she said smugly. You could rule like a god, king, or emperor, but since you're such a goody two-shoes, change everything, change people's minds, people praise, and respect mighty heroes throughout this world, and any other you choose to go to. You can always be the hero in the dark that bad people fear. Create yourself, as a symbol good people can stand behind, rally behind, and that is so much more than the corrupt could stand, and, as yourself change minds in the light. And break bones in the night, be the hero people need, not what people expect. A hero, Naruto asked. He knew what the word meant, and used it a lot, but he didn't understand much beyond that. But heroes are ninja. They save the day, and rescue people, and... He stopped, as she had snorted, and interrupted him. Ninja are murderers, thieves, assassins, soldiers, hired thugs no better than that Gato man's men. It was just that you were hired to protect while they were hired to kill. The reverse could have been true. Do you think the Konoha doesn't take jobs to kill innocent people? Do you think the Konoha is the holy land of goodness? Ninja, no matter the village, are just superpowered Ranta soldiers unless they're fighting for their lords in a war. They're not heroes, and thinking they are is almost as childish and pathetic as that pink-haired bitch's belief that the idiot Uchiha will ever want to cuddle her, admit he loves her, or even that he likes her for that matter. Naruto looked away, and it was painful to swallow. He had been taught many things, but not once when he was in the ninja academy had anyone given him such a lesson. He knew this lesson deep down, but it was also hard to swallow. It had been all jokes at the academy, making light of a cold reality, and making it seem like they could become legendary heroes of Konoha, but Konoha's heroes were other places' villains. He realized that even if he was told all of this, he likely wouldn't have taken it seriously. Nobody did. It was almost like he suspected a normal school would be like. Naruto now realized they made light of the truth because right now, the plain truth shoved in his face, made him doubt his choices. He could almost feel tears in his eyes, but he saw his dreams change, and he liked the changes. It's like an ice-cold ocean smashing you repeatedly with all its stormy night. Kyuubi said gently. The truth can be hard to swallow, and your human instructors were fucking morons. They didn't train any of you like potential soldiers, but just like children playing games. Then they send you out with a teacher that just cares about the Uchiha. It's pathetic of him, as your father was his teacher, and was a fair and just man. Sure, I'm pissed at being trapped again, but it could be worse. He and your mother had killed and murdered. He may be a hero here, but in other lands he's remembered as a murdering piece of shit. Then how can I become a hero? Naruto asked, as he took in that his idol was not just his father, but not the hero he had always thought, but just another weapon. Heroes are both feared and loved, she said looking mildly amused, as she shrugged her delicate-looking shoulders. Loved by those they protect, save, and rescue the innocent. However, those who hurt others, steal or rule unjustly, fear them. There could be times where whole countries would call for your head because their ruler fears being dethroned, and there can be times when some pretty little lasses with tight little arses let you fuck all three holes to show you their gratitude. Kyuubi laughed a little, as Naruto burned bright red in the cheeks. I'm not like that. I'm not a pervert, he half shouted in embarrassed anger, even though he secretly liked that idea. She rolled her blood-red eyes. I guess I'll have to give you the proper talk, not that bullshit that stupid bitch gave you that fucked with your mind fighting your body's normal growth. It's okay to enjoy playing with yourself, and it's a normal teenage boy or girl thing to do. But we'll get back to that later. If you're to get stronger and become this powerful hero, first, you must understand what I want in return. Like what I'm not letting you out. Like you could, she hissed while rolling her eyes again. The first thing is, you will no longer take anything at face value, and you are no one's tool. If your bosses give you an order that goes against your hero's code, then say no, and then beat them to death, or not, depending on who it was. You would be in your right to refuse a mission, and you can always play them if you really have to. Also, this is a corrupt and lawless continent, so you will have to kill, and you will have to have the enemies of the innocent fearing you. If this is what you want, then you have to turn yourself into a myth. They will know you're strong, but you need to make them believe you are stronger than you are even when you are that strong. You are a ninja, and deception is always a must. Also, I've seen it a lot where foolish ninja make their fighting styles all about finesse and elegance. However, what good is that to the opponent who is just too fast, too strong, and much too violent, or worse, the killer that you never saw coming? You could kill without them having known you were ever stalking them. Don't stand around mocking your opponents, as that is petty and disrespectful to both you and them. Strike hard, kill fast, but best yet, don't let them see you. Kill them so fast they won't have realized you were even there until they're meeting their ancestors in hell. But isn't that like... No, fighting in a war human on human is all the same, because of greed, she replied shrugging. You want to be a hero here, then you have to be the judge, the jury, and the executioner. If you can swing it, never give them a chance to fight. No fighting means you don't get hurt, but when you do have to fight you will be the unstoppable force, and the unmovable object. Then what do I have to do? He asked, knowing that out of everyone he knew, she was the only one willing and capable of training him. And do you know, he asked curiously, whether Killer Fox Girl cared to learn human techniques. I've been on this planet for over 1,000 years, so I might have picked up a thing or two, she replied with a smug smirk. As for what I want from you, this is your mind, and I've grown bored of the prison backdrop you Uzumakis keep giving me by default. Your mother's seal was too tight, but yours allows for change. I can change where we are. He asked in surprise, as she nodded. But will you tell me more about my parents? He asked in hope. She groaned, but she expected it. I'll tell you bits and pieces, she agreed, which made him look happy. However, you'll work yourself like a monster to earn my knowledge, and if you're lucky, I might let you see a few memories, but that is a tricky trick, so don't hold out too much hope. Naruto nodded readily, a little tick she was blackmailing him, but help was help, and maybe during anything she told him he would learn the truth of why his parents had to die. So, he closed his eyes, and concentrated on something peaceful, and when his eyes opened Kyuubi-chan's cage had changed, but she was still naked, he could see her so much clearer, and the blackness and red glow had disappeared. The cage was now perfect glass reflecting the bright sunlight, as they were in an expansive field of freshly cut grass, with endless fields of white, pink, red, blue, and many other colored flowers, stretching out to endless depths. Then further an endless lake shone beautifully to one side. It was nothing like Konoha, but it was amazing all the same. Hey, I don't mind the flowers, and love the water, Kyuubi startled him, as she was angry. And the glass cage is an improvement, but I can't teach you to fight while stuck in here. It's your mind, I can't go anywhere but in the mindscape, and even then, I'll be limited. He frowned, as he thought about letting her out before looking up. He had freed her, but now she was wearing a white leather collar around her neck. She fiddled with it in surprise before looking at him, and he shrugged. Whatever, she said in annoyance. Well, I always believe that dawdling will get nothing done, so prepare to feel pain. I can keep you here for a cool 12 hours on the outside or so, as long as I don't sense anyone, but here time moves so much slower, so that could be up to a month. You also have the advantage of my awesomeness, she smirked here, and he got a good look at her sharp-looking canines. This means I can connect my powers with your body. Although, you won't feel the pain after a few weeks of it, your body will grow accustomed. I heal you fast enough that it won't harm your body. What won't he interrupted, as she hadn't told him yet, and he was getting worried. Connecting dream you to your body's muscle memory, she said, baffling him. In here you can grow with chakra, but it's still a dream, so under normal circumstances it's limited to chakra and knowledge, even learning to fight, but your body's muscles wouldn't have the instinct, and they wouldn't grow no matter how much you trained here. However, I have changed that, so you can train physically here, and gain experience in the real world, she said, smirking. So, are you ready? I've always believed the basics were the most important, so we won't properly move on until you can fight. You're going to be feeling this for the next few weeks when you wake until your real body adapts. It's just cool that you can't sleep here, so there is no escape. Naruto gulped, and had only a new thought, as he looked at her. Don't you want some clothes? She just shook her head before looking at him, and he cried out, as she attacked, his clothes torn off in seconds before she hopped back checking him out. It's even bigger in person, she said, creeping him out, as he covered himself. If you want to live, you can't worry about being naked. You could get attacked in your bed or in the shower. You cannot let such a stupid thing, as embarrassment or modesty be your death, because that would be embarrassing. Kill the shit, and then he can't tell anyone, but you have nothing to be embarrassed about, you should be proud of that. If you don't fight back, you'll be hurt so much more. She finished moving faster than he had seen anyone move before. He moved his hand as a reflex, as her small fist crashed into his stomach. The wind exploded from his lungs, as he flew back crashing completely naked through the flowers, booming them up, as he skidded to a painful stop at the end of a gouge of dirt. Naruto couldn't help but groan, as he rested after another beating. It's been around 3 weeks in this dream world of his creation, and he had kind of gotten used to being naked around his demonic prisoner. Though he sometimes got aroused, and Kairu-chan, what he calls her now, teased him a little, and didn't make things easier on him, as she was smoking hot, and just as naked, but even she was impressed he ignored his issue, and continued training. He had to get much stronger after all. She had taken to helping him a little with his standard academy ninjutsu, but she refused to use hand seals or even say the techniques' names. He was not sure she had ever cared to learn or remember them. She had then given him a 3-hour lecture about the pointlessness of both. Apparently, neither hand seals or words were needed, and she said they are basically a learning aid to give a learning ninja something to focus on while starting out with the techniques, and they had become habit with ninja, and since Naruto already knew the hand seals and names, she didn't want him to use them anymore. In addition, Kairu-chan wanted Naruto to stop making things go poof by wasting chakra like that. So, she told him about the Shadow Clone's ability to pass on knowledge and help with chakra control, which would lessen the poof of the waste of chakra until it was completely gone. Naruto wished he experimented with his clones beforehand enough to realize what he was doing wrong, or what training purposes they could serve. He had just used them to fight, so they never lasted long enough for him to realize that he learned and improved from just using them. Naruto had used them, and could not only walk, but also water walk, and he didn't have to get wet. Now normally using hundreds of clones to train like that could be harmful, and overload your brain, which would be unlikely for anyone else to make that many clones, but Naruto did have demonic levels of chakra at his disposal in the real world. In addition, since this wasn't the real world, they could add some bypasses to such problems with relative ease. Naruto only needed to send a large number of clones off every so often, and they ran off into the woods he created to do more chakra control exercises, and that training within the dream allowed his mind to adapt and improve for clone use in the real world. He looked up from where he sat in the grass to see Kairu-chan stretching, as he stood before him, and he gulped, as his babana was soon semi-hard. He knew she did it on purpose to tease him for her own twisted and pervy entertainment, but at least he now knew he wasn't a pervert for wanting to do pervy things to her, though he was certain she was pervy, but she had been trapped within him and his mother before him, and another Uzumaki before her with no freedom or company or anything, so Naruto felt she was entitled to a little enjoyment in life. Gyokanir-chan, she said with a cute purr and amused sigh while rolling her stunning crimson eyes. Just deal with it for fuck's sake, she laughed at him while his cheeks darkened, and she licked her lips while staring at him. Just wrap your hand around it and pump away until you shoot your load, and you'll feel so much better. I can't do that here, in front of you, he said out quietly, as his cheeks felt like they might explode along with his beating heart. That's embarrassing, and worse than when you dot. She moved over to him with a cool snarl, and glaring, and before he could comprehend what was going on she had turned, and pushed him back onto his back, and sat on his strong abs with her tails pinning him down facing away from him, and he quivered, as he licked his lips looking at her arse. What are you? He trailed off in a gasp. His large, and now solid member twitched, and felt incredible, as Kairu's small right hand wrapped around his hard babana, and squeezed the hot tool. Her hand was way too small to wrap around the whole of it. Kairu, what are you? Please, you're killing me here, he whimpered, as he never wanted her to stop. Just shut up, and enjoy yourself, you fucking dipshit. She hissed out, and he groaned, as she started pumping his rock hardness. He couldn't even think of stopping her, as his fingers wound into her soft fur-like hair, and through the fur of her soft tails. He was stroking her, and reached her ears when a soft purring emitted from her chest like a cat. However, she concentrated on pumping his erection. He had relaxed, and wondered why he hadn't realized how good it felt, how amazing Kairu was to him, even if she did have a bit of a potty mouth. He loved what she was doing to him. Come on, you like that, huh? She purred out. She was moving herself, grinding her soaking crouch on him, secretly pissed that she's feeling this good. She just wanted him to, and stop resisting such pleasures, but she liked it. Shit, if you're not ready I don't care, because I haven't been with anyone for centuries. I can live with the shame of you being a weak human for now. I'll soon make you so much more. What, oh god? He cried out, as she slid toward his throbbing member. She was really tight, hot, and wet, as she cried out, as she slid out over it, tearing through her cherry, and burning with desire. Her soaking insides were like liquid fire, and squeezing Naruto for all it was worth. And the most amazing feeling he had ever had. Fuck, she cried out, gasping for breath, as she was surprised. She managed to get it all in now she was so small. I forgot this body is new because of the ceiling, but damn. I can feel it all, and you best not blow before I... He just whimpered, as she started moving up and down, purring louder and faster, as she rode him faster and harder. His hands had moved to his waist, guiding her, moving her beautiful body up and down, faster and harder. It was the most amazing feeling he had ever felt. It was difficult for him not to explode, but he felt it, that feeling, and held it, waiting for her. Kaoru was moaning out, her body quivering, as she let Naruto move her up and down on him, as she was too weak in her legs. It felt so amazing. She squeezed her own yupai, pinching her solid nipples. It had been so long, and this new body was just crying out for pleasure, and she cried, gasping for breath, her body squirting out over his tool, as he continued to move her up and down. "Now, just let go, fire into me," she demanded, her chest heaving. "I want to feel it in me, every last sticky drop." She couldn't continue speaking, as he just pulled her down, as hard as he could while gasping out. She felt it bursting out of him, and filling her body with its hot sticky goodness. Her breath was taken away, and she felt so incredible. He might not be perfect, but with a little work, she could improve his technique. She waited a few minutes to make sure he had finished squirting his load deep inside her before she slid up, leaving him a sticky mess. Her purring had calmed, as she stood over him looking back with cold red eyes with juices, and even some blood trailing down her thighs. "Now we've both had a rest, it's time to get back to work. I will not have a weak prison, but more, I refuse to have a weak lover." Naruto could only stare for a moment, his babana softening and sticky with and a little blood from Kaoru, and he muttered the first thing that came to mind. "I didn't think foxes purred." She rolled her eyes and stepped over him before kicking him in the ribs. "Get a clue, Naru-chan," she said, smirking. "I'm not from this planet, remember, but then I suppose you have a lot to learn." Naruto groaned, as he shook his head clear, and winced, as he rubbed his abs, and remembered if she lets him do that again not to say something stupid afterwards, and to keep his guard up. She wasn't a soft creature. Well, he looked at her cute fluffy ears. She wasn't completely soft. He knew somewhere along the road she had other motives other than not wanting to be kept in a weak prison, and the way he saw it, it was somewhere along the lines of vengeance, but he would deal with that when it came. Now though, it was just about the training, the fighting, the hunting, and striking, and by the look of it, the sex too. Maybe she would be satisfied with that for now. Naruto rolled out of the way, as Kaoru-chan came crashing down, her small fist impacting the ground where his head lay moments before. The dirt blasted up and around in a radius. As he threw himself up to his feet, she carried on moving at him with a sweeping kick, taking out his feet, and putting him back down, and crashing into the ground. "Just because a girl gives you some doesn't mean she won't try to kill you moments after," she said, mocking him, as she went to stomp on his face. However, he moved fast enough, and caught her foot, disabling her. He knocked her back, and flipped back up to his feet while panting for breath. Naruto ground his teeth, taking a few deep breaths to calm himself down, while his blue eyes watched her, not blinking, as he rolled his shoulders, as he waited for her to attack again. However, she just stood, and watched him while smirking, her red eyes fixing him with her cool stare. He knew this was a part of her game plan, her fun way of seeing whether he would charge in her weight, and watch for an opening. He shifted his weight slightly, and watched her take the bait. As she took half a step back, he shot forward with his right fist, sliding over her body. As she leaned so far back her head was almost touching the ground, and yet she didn't fall back. Naruto was practically flush to her soft and warm body, as he had seriously overextended himself, and her smirk did not look promising. "You should always have a backup of a backup when you go in for the attack," she laughed, as she licked his face before both her palms smashed into his abs, and in a pulse of power, he went flying into the air, crying out in shock and pain. She grinned, as she flipped back around onto her small feet, and jumped up past him, as she flipped round with an overheel, kicking him in the back down. He cried out more, as he slammed into the dirt floor, whimpering, as he pushed himself up and away, as she slammed her fist into the ground moments later, forming a wide shallow crater. He didn't have time to catch his breath, as she continued her assault low down, as she seemed to disappear only to reappear next to him. She had her right hand, her fingers lightly touching the ground by his feet, holding her perky body off the ground, as she swung her legs around. She swept him in a scissor kick, knocking him off his feet before following through, as she flipped up her left foot, smashing straight into his chest, where he went flying backwards again. However, her eyes widened, and she would admit she was impressed, as he righted himself in mid-flight, as he was falling to land. He hit the ground, skidding back, making a small trail, as he dug in both toes and fingers, bringing him to a stop. He was an unusual student. He learned fast from doing. However, he didn't just learn what he saw, or what had been done to him, he improved upon it. Kaoru allowed herself to smirk slightly, as she was still wet, and still a little horny, even though Naruto's babana had made her quite sore. This time Naruto shot forward, as soon as he stopped, and caught Kaoru off guard, as his left knee connected with her stomach, knocking the wind out of her, and sending her bouncing several yards across the ground. Though, while bouncing, she managed to gain control, and push herself up to her feet to a stop. Kaoru smirked darkly, as she caught her breath, watching him catch his, licking her lips. She may have her own motivation for helping him, but, as long as she gets these extra fringe benefits, she was pleased to care for her warden in the most fun ways possible. Kaoru smirked, and clenched her small fists. She would get her vengeance at the end. Naruto would claim her revenge in her stead, and she would lead him to that victory, and in exchange, she would lead him to whatever he desired. After all, it would suit him too, which was a reason to train him. Another was that she would not let herself be associated with a weakling. Konoha and its ninja could believe Naruto was weaker than them all they liked, but the rest of this world would know that Naruto Uzumaki was a powerful and dangerous ninja, and his name would bring fear to all the dipshit criminals and bastards throughout the world. Even the most feared monsters in the world would fear him. Kairu knew it would take a miracle for these people to change. It was easier to hate than it was to forgive, but then creatures like them didn't deserve Naruto's forgiveness, because most of them would never seek it. Kairu's not stupid though, so she knew some in Konoha might seek Naruto's forgiveness, those who don't yet know of her presence, but just go along with the older crowd. It was just a matter of giving them reason to want forgiveness, and if Naruto's ninja hero kick worked out, he might actually get support. Though, if Naruto really wants to be a real hero, then he won't seek praise or recognition, but just the gratitude of those he saves. Kairu let her smirk widened, as he had a long way to go yet, but with her intense training, he would have tyrants and drug-peddling slave traders fearing the very thought of him. He would be the thing of criminals' nightmares, and the victims' dreams and fantasies. "You've got to do better," she said, as she swished towards him. "I have to make you stronger, better at everything." She swished into his defenses, and started punching and kicking, pushing him back while he was trying in vain to block her hits while pedaling his steps backwards. However, she was keeping up, as she pedaled forward, and continued her attack when she pulled back both wrists together, and she punted her palms forward, crashing into his chest, forcing him backwards, shooting over the flower field. Naruto whimpered, as he again bounced through the flowers, skidding along the ground when they changed to a huge lake surrounded by swamplands and forests. He pushed himself up while landing on his bare feet covered in bruises. He stood on the surface. He had half hoped that she would sink, but if he could catch her off guard that easily while cheating, he would be the one teaching her a thing or two. She just smirked smugly, as she walked towards him over the water's surface, as she looked around. "I like the way you're thinking," she said, but the smug tone of her voice made him gulp. "But this just makes things so much harder for you," she laughed, as she dropped with a splash into the water, and slipped under the surface. Naruto could only look sad for a moment before he felt her hands around his ankles, and he was pulled in. If only he made the water warm, but as it was, the water was freezing. He held his breath just before his head went under, but, as he had been taught, if his eyes were not at risk to keep them open while fighting. Don't even blink or you could miss something. Keep all your senses alert to the fullest of your ability. She floated up, as they were both submerged. Her fingers stroked up his body from his thighs before ending at his abs, and striking with a powerful punch. However, for once her cheap shot didn't connect, as he grabbed her shoulders, and weaved out of the way before lashing out with his right knee connecting with her ribs. He could see her grunting even under the water before he let her go, and swam away. It was just unfortunate that underwater Kairu-chan was just as fast, and moved, swimming up behind him, and grabbing his hair with one hand, while the other wound around to his chest. He felt her teeth nibbling on his left ear, as he struggled to get free. Naruto was running out of breath, and no amount of cute otherworldly monster nibbling his ear was going to stop him panicking. However, it took a thought, and he was on his hands and knees gasping for breath, as the lake had been replaced by a large glade. Kairu had surprisingly not landed heavily on him, but was still holding him like a girl might. A giant teddy won at a carnival. Well, if the girl liked nibbling the teddy's ear and pulling on its hair, and this one apparently did. "It's so much better to do this on dry land," she muttered in his ear with her soft, warm, wiggly tongue in it. "But you need to practice holding your breath while fighting underwater. Eventually I'll want you to be able to go a full 30 minutes or longer without having to breathe. It's not all about water. I may be able to filter out poisonous gases, but they can still screw with you." He whimpered shakily. He wondered how she could turn feeling her beautiful body against his back, and her tongue in his ear into a lesson that was bound to be painful, and give him years of bad dreams. Though, if she keeps this up, those bad dreams will be overlapped by good ones. What are you?" he asked out with a pleasant shudder rolling down his spine. "Shut up," she hissed out in his ear, the hand on his chest sliding down his abs, and to his slowly hardening weapon. Her fingers and thumb slowly pumped it to rock status. "I've never experienced a human before you, and I never knew that I could find one so luring. Though, I have been alone for so long, trapped in your second cousin, and then your mother, and now I'm practically half human in you." Naruto quivered again, as her tongue slid through, and around his ear and cheek. "Oh, hell," he whimpered, as she suckled on his earlobe, and pumped his member. "Don't worry, in a few real-world weeks," she spoke huskily, "you'll be capable of taking the ultimate title of fuck god of Konoha. You're going to get plenty of practice in me," he purred, causing him to whimper. Her squeezing on his hard, throbbing, kneading made him realize. He so wanted that title more than anything right now. "Teach me, Kairu-sensei." His whimpered out, as he finally looked back at her. He felt his heart pound harder. Her blood-red eyes had darkened, and the pixelation was wild with need. He found it oddly sexy to see her soaking wet, her hair lathered to her body, and her cute ears pulled back in aggression. Her lips pulled back. As she growled, her lips crashed with his, kissing him. He was shocked by this action, but he didn't pull back. Instead, he closed his eyes, welcoming her warm wet tongue into his mouth. His tongue met hers, and she let him loose to turn around in her arms, his wrapping around her waist. She still kept hold of him. She looked into his lustful eyes, as they darkened, as he pushed her back crashing to the ground, his hands roaming her while hers roamed him. She had let go of him to feel his muscular body, her hands now roaming through his hair, pulling his lips down her jaw to her neck, which caused her to moan and whimper out with their legs intertwining. Her fingernails were digging bloodily into his back, but he just let the pain egg him on, as he suckled her neck, his hands taking in her soft upai, tweaking at her large stiff nipples. She pushed him further down to her upai, as he squeezed on in each hand, coning them. His mouth took one large nipple after the other, and she cried out, begging him to be rougher, more violent. He sucked harder, and nibbled on her nipples. She screamed out. As he bit harder, she held his head to her small bust. "Oh, gods, don't stop," she demanded. "Touch me, put your fingers in me, hold me, hurt me, screw me hard." While one hand continued with his mouth working her small tits, the other slid down her tight, firm body to her smooth private part, touching it for the first time with his fingers. It's soft and smooth, hot like flames dancing in her soaking wet juices, and sucked up his middle finger, then another, moving them in and out faster and faster. He was nibbling her nipples while squeezing her upai tighter, her fingers only digging deeper and deeper. Some of her tails were wiping around them, violently smashing up the ground, while others wrapped around him, holding them tight together. He moved with effort up between her legs, as he pulled his fingers free of his painting demon, and licked them clean before placing his solid member over her entrance. It could feel her furnace, as she demanded it, begging for it hard and strong. Naruto was lost in his need, as he rammed it in, which caused her to scream high-pitched with pain and pleasure, as his large weapon slid right into his hilt. He then started pumping, her legs wrapping around his waist, as he held her slim waist, and pounded her while warping chakra through his muscles to increase his strength and speed. He moved faster and faster while she cried out and moaned, ordering him to move faster, to break her, while her tails were lashing out, showing her power, as they sliced him and her both, but it just egged him on to be more vicious with his thrusts. It felt like nothing he had ever imagined, like electricity running through his glands, up into his stomach, and through his heart and mind exploding. However, as he pulled up from kissing her moaning and crying lips, her legs had loosened from exhaustion, and the feeling was plowing through her body. He enjoyed watching her expression, crossing pain and pleasure, but all she wanted was more and more, which he was only too eager to give to her. Her small delicious upai moved with every pump of her body. Her eyes were closed, but tears still leaked from her closed eyelids. Her hands had moved to his shoulders, her claws like nails cutting into them. Naruto moved faster and faster, so much so that they were crushing the ground with his thrusts, their interconnected parts making squiggling sounds, as he pounded harder into her. Her body quivering, as she continually cried out and ordered more, demanding that he fill her up. He could feel it bubbling powerfully in his gut. Naruto pulled Kaoru up into his arms, his fingers wrapped tightly in her hair, pulling what he held tortuously enough that he pulled her head back, grazing her exposed neck with his teeth. She held him tighter, her nails in his flesh, pulling his body tight to hers. Her tails were spilling both of their blood, tearing the glade up, but they kept going more. He moved carrying her, and moving faster than he thought he could, shattered a tree with her back, and head slamming into it while he continued, her tails flooring the few other trees around them, and with each thrust the large tree cracked more. He couldn't help but feel satisfied by her scream, as he continued screwing her up against the tree, and as she kept pulling him to her. "Kumin me," she ordered, demanded, and that was all it took now for him to finally explode his load in her. The first time he did this felt amazing, but this time, words escaped him. He would never have guessed one guy could hold so much seed that he could feel it continuing, and even overflowing from her body. Naruto was gasping for breath, as he leaned tiredly on her, trying hard to catch his breath with the last few pumps, and squirt after squirt, while her body was convulsing and spasming with her own pleasure. His kunai continued to throb, and empty his load into her perfect beautiful body for a few minutes, while they both desperately gasped and panted for breath before it slowed to a stop. They had both relaxed, holding each other soaked with sweat and blood, overheated, her tails now flopped and relaxed. "You may just get that title if you stay such a good student," she whispered, as she was snuggled in his arms holding on to him, as he held her with his babonas still rock solid and still deep inside her. "After all, a good fuck can get you far with the right lady. I'll just have to add teaching you how to pick up the ladies, but remember, not all girls can take such a hard and violent pounding," she said tiredly. Naruto chuckled a little, feeling as if he was near death, as he lowered them down and lay on his back, collapsed, and she just snuggled tight into his embrace, loving the feeling of him still staying strong in her, while they lay amongst the broken trees. Their wounds were slowly sealing over as they rested, and with her fur, an incredible fur-like hair, and her soft comfortable body purring contently on top of him, it was like a soft and comfortable blanket over them, and she kissed him on the lips for a moment before snuggling, as one. Wow, real ninja training is so much more fun than I ever thought, Naruto muttered to himself more than to her, breathless still. And I think I'm more eager to learn than ever. It's all about the motivation, my jailer. She replied with a tired yawn, as she cuddled her jailer feeling comfortable and content. The scene of each other mingled together to make her feel relaxed, as they rested together. And from that weapon still buried to the hilt in his scabbard, I think I might be the luckiest teacher. Naruto smiled, as he just held her, and relished in the attention and affection, while cuddling his demon vixen, Kyuubi-chan.
That's it for today guys. I hope you enjoyed my video and see you in the next part of this video. Till then, sayonara.